The U.S. is strengthening sanctions on China over its genocide against ethnic minorities. A new bill from the Senate bans imports from China's Xinjiang region. An American military aircraft stopped briefly in Taiwan. The move angers Beijing, while a Taiwanese lawmaker fights back. Biden's new Navy Secretary nominee says if confirmed, he'll exclusively focus on the China threat and defend Taiwan as much as humanly possible. China is becoming an evil empire, and the U.S. may be enabling it. That's according to former Vice-President Mike Pence. And China sells 550 million vaccine doses to the WHO's global vaccine program. But a U.S. agency is criticizing Beijing for not donating them instead. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The U.S. Senate is passing a bill banning the country from importing goods from China's Xinjiang region. This is the latest effort to punish Beijing for the genocide against Uyghurs. Jason Albano reports.
The U.S. Senate passed a bill on Wednesday banning products from China's Xinjiang region. It's the latest effort by Washington to punish Beijing for what U.S. officials say is an ongoing genocide there against Uyghurs and other Muslim groups. China denies mistreating Uyghurs and says the camps are vocational training centers needed to fight extremism. Under the current rule, the import of goods into the U.S. can be banned if there is reasonable evidence of forced labor. The bill assumes goods manufactured in Xinjiang are made with forced labor until proven otherwise and certified by U.S. authorities. The Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act was passed in the Senate by unanimous bipartisan consent. It was now past the House of Representatives before being sent to the White House for President Joe Biden to sign into law. It was not immediately clear when that might take place. Republican Senator Marco Rubio, who co-authored the bill, called on the House to act quickly. In a statement, he wrote, "We will not turn a blind eye to the CCP's ongoing crimes against humanity, and we will not allow corporations a free pass to profit from those horrific abuses." The bill's other co-author, Democrat Jeff Merkley, also said no American consumers should be inadvertently purchasing products from slave labor. Democratic and Republican aides expect the measure would get strong support from the House after it approved a similar measure nearly unanimously last year. Rights groups and Western officials have long maintained that Xinjiang authorities have facilitated forced labor by detaining around 1 million Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities since 2016.
Beijing denied claims of human rights abuses in Xinjiang on Thursday again. They also warned the U.S. to, as they called, stop conducting political manipulation. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, accused the U.S. of having sinister intentions in trying to use Xinjiang to control China. In a rare move, a U.S. military aircraft stopped briefly in Taiwan today, and Beijing is angry over it.
Neither the Taiwanese nor the U.S. government disclosed the purpose of the stopover. According to Taiwanese media, the cargo jet delivered a package to the American Institute in Taiwan. Taiwan's Air Force denied any contact with the U.S. aircraft. The stopover angered Beijing. The Chinese Defense Ministry said that any foreign military aircraft must obtain permission from Beijing to land on Chinese territory. Communist China has never ruled Taiwan, but claims the island as its own territory. Meanwhile, Taiwan has its own elected leaders, constitution, and military. A Taiwanese lawmaker said on Facebook that the landing has great significance.
Taiwan has the power to decide who it as a country wants to host, and the U.S. also has the power to determine how it interacts with Taiwan. That's how it is. The CCP's threatening remarks do nothing to us other than highlighting its arrogant hegemony.
This is not the first time a U.S. military jet visited Taiwan this year. In early June, 3 U.S. senators paid a short visit to Taiwan on a U.S. Air Force cargo jet. That was considered the highest-level visit by U.S. military jets since the U.S. cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan in 1979.
President Biden's Navy Secretary nominee, Carlos Del Toro, is saying that if confirmed, he will exclusively focus on the China threat and defend Taiwan as much as humanly possible. This is what he told the Senate during a hearing on Tuesday.
It's incredibly important to defend Taiwan in every way possible, and it takes a holistic view of our national commitment to Taiwan. We should be focused on providing Taiwan with as much self-defensive measures as humanly possible. And if confirmed to the Navy, I'm going to be exclusively focused on the China threat and exclusively focused on moving our maritime strategy forward in order to protect Taiwan and all of our national security interests in the Indo-Pacific theater.
Del Toro was responding to questions from Senator Rick Scott. Scott mentioned that in recent war simulations, the U.S. would have trouble defending Taiwan amid a Chinese invasion. Overall, it seems Del Toro views Beijing as a prominent threat to the U.S. Navy.
China, with its autocratic system and its determined incursion into the South China Sea and globally, presents a constant naval threat.
Del Toro was born in Cuba and graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. He served in the Navy for 22 years and once commanded a warship. Former U.S. Vice-President Mike Pence made a sobering remark regarding China Wednesday. In his toughest words to date, he said China is becoming an evil empire and the U.S. may be enabling it.
The Chinese Communist Party is the greatest threat to our prosperity, security, and values on the face of the earth. China may not yet be an evil empire, but it's working hard every day to become one. Because China is pursuing its global ambitions more aggressively than ever before. While Americans were celebrating the 4th of July just a few short days ago, President Xi Jinping gave a speech commemorating the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Chinese Communist Party. In that speech, he warned the world that anyone standing in China's way, and I quote, will find their heads bashed bloody against a great wall of steel forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people. There's an old saying that weakness arouses evil. And my sense is that China senses weakness in this new administration.
Pence delivered the speech during an annual lecture at American think tank the Heritage Foundation. The former U.S. ambassador for international religious freedom says the Chinese Communist Party is in its waning days. He says that's because of the CCP's increased harshness and brutality, as well as its pervasive high-tech surveillance.
The International Religious Freedom, or IRF Summit, took place in Washington on Wednesday. There, former American IRF ambassador Sam Brownback told the Epoch Times that Beijing is showing a sign of weakness with its war on faith. He says the Chinese regime is on its last legs because it's become more brutal instead of more liberating, and that it's using bullying tactics rather than cooperation. Brownback says the most abused human right in the world today is the freedom of religion.
We need to reach out to governments and cultures alike and say that freedom of faith is the way forward. If we don't have religious freedom for all around the world, we will have the clash of civilizations, full of death and carnage, and you can see it setting up now.
The ambassador said that countries once looked away from Beijing's human rights abuses for fear of offending the regime, but now they're starting to speak out. What's more, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo questions Biden's priorities with respect to China.
To date, the current administration indicated its central focus with respect to China, and indeed the rest of the world, may well be in something like climate change, relegating religious liberty to a side issue. This is unfortunate. In my view, it is foolish, and it would be a grave mistake to prioritize climate change at the expense of allowing religious oppression to fester and grow throughout the world.
The Biden administration did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Another speaker at the summit was Republican Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey. He says the current CCP leadership is persecuting religious believers at a rate not seen since about 50 years ago.
As I think many of you know, Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party have exponentially increased persecution against religious believers, including Christians. I want to do a shout out to Bob Fu, Pastor Bob Fu, for the great work that he has done. But they're also persecuting Muslims, Tibetan Buddhists, ongoing, and Falun Gong practitioners in ways not seen since Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution.
The regime's persecution of Falun Gong practitioners started on July 20th, 1999, and just ahead of the 22nd anniversary, Brownback gave the following message to adherents of the spiritual practice: don't give up the fight.
Should the Chinese regime be held accountable for the damages caused by the CCP virus pandemic? A new poll released Tuesday shows that almost 2/3 of Americans believe Beijing should pay reparations for the pandemic. That number rises to almost 4/5 if Beijing is found to have released the virus on purpose. American pollster TIPP conducted the survey for think tank the Center for Security Policy. In addition, 49% of the respondents say they believe the virus was developed in a lab, with a quarter saying they believe the CCP created and released it intentionally. A new political Harvard poll shows similar numbers. 52% of the respondents say they believe the virus came out of a lab in China. Coming up, China is selling 550 million vaccine doses to the WHO's global vaccine program. A U.S. agency is criticizing Beijing for not donating them. More on that after the break.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
The World Health Organization's COVAX global vaccine distribution program is buying 550 million vaccine doses from China. A U.S. agency says this is appalling and that Beijing is profiting from the pandemic for not donating the doses.
Rather than offering donations and financial assistance, the Chinese regime is selling CCP virus vaccines to the World Health Organization, or WHO's COVAX program. The program says it works to provide equal opportunities for countries to get CCP virus vaccines. Earlier this week, COVAX announced they signed 2 purchase agreements with Chinese state-owned vaccine makers Sinopharm and Sinovac. The deals involve up to 550 million vaccine doses. U.S. Senator Jim Risch questioned the decision on Wednesday.
Do they appreciate the irony of this, where, China started this and refused to participate in COVAX? And won't contribute money, won't contribute vaccines, but then COVAX is turning around and actually paying them for their vaccines. I mean, this is odd, it's strange.
Samantha Power, the administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development, said that she has talked with COVAX on this issue and that the deal is appalling.
First of all, it is appalling that Beijing chose to make a profit on those vaccines rather than to contribute financially to COVAX or to donate its state-owned doses to COVAX to reach people in their hour of desperate need. There's no other way around it. It's appalling.
The two sides signed the deal amid rising concerns over the efficacy of Chinese vaccines.
We read what's going on with the Chinese vaccine. It seems to be pretty low quality.
Power is pointing out an awkward situation that many countries face when they are in desperate need of vaccines. They either get Chinese vaccines or no vaccines.
Various popular Chinese websites experienced brief outages around the same time Tuesday night. That's amid Beijing's crackdown on Chinese big tech, but it's currently unclear if the two are related. A Chinese video streaming platform similar to YouTube was among the first to go down. The outage drove millions of users crazy. The site Bilibili is known for offering Japanese anime. The news of the outage became the top trending topic on Chinese social media Weibo and has been viewed almost 1 billion times. Many Bilibili users lamented that they lost access around 11 p.m. local time. That's the peak time for online entertainment in the country. Screenshots that users posted online show error messages such as 404 not found or sorry, the page is not available now. Around the same time, various other Chinese websites, including another video streaming site, an ebooks website, and a social media platform, also went down briefly. Discussion about Bilibili's outage led to a speculation that there was a fire at the company's headquarters in Shanghai. But the Shanghai Fire Department responded, saying there were no reports of fire in the building. Bilibili resumed service by early Wednesday morning. The other sites experiencing similar outages have also recovered. Bilibili issued a statement blaming server problems for the outage. The site has over 60 million daily active users and has grown in influence among China's Gen Z. They make up around 20% of the Chinese population. Vaccine mandates are a reality in many regions across China. Unvaccinated people are denied access to certain public spaces. Even their salaries can be cut. Authorities in 5 Chinese provinces have recently announced such measures. Among them, a county in eastern China's Zhejiang province is barring unvaccinated residents from entering places such as nursing homes, schools, libraries, museums, and the inpatient departments of hospitals, among others. The new rules will come into effect at the end of this month. Such counties in South China's Jiangxi province will implement similar measures around the same time. And they also have supermarkets and transportation hubs on the no-go list for unvaccinated people. The restrictions are triggering heated discussions on Chinese social media. One Chinese netizen says the measures have become vaccine mandates in disguise. Some netizens are ridiculing the effectiveness of Chinese vaccines. They say those who have been vaccinated should go to the hospital to check if they have antibodies. If they don't, they shouldn't be allowed to go out either. Chinese authorities have previously been trying to incentivize vaccination by offering people free milk and eggs. Now they seem to be taking more drastic measures. In many cities, unvaccinated workers at state-owned firms and state agencies will get their salaries cut. Their close relatives are also required to get vaccinated. And local authorities in a city in Jiangxi province announced this week that students must submit to their schools proof of vaccination for all family members, and the schools will inspect them. But back in April, China's National Health Commission strongly criticized forced vaccination. A Chinese netizen questioned on Twitter, "It's only been 3 months, and this policy has already changed. Do the CCP's words count?" EU leaders are grouping together to counter China's Belt and Road Infrastructure Initiative. They've set out an ambitious connectivity plan that starts in 2022. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
The EU is creating an infrastructure strategy to develop transport and trade routes. It's called a Globally Connected Europe and starts in 2022. It's been set up to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative.
Countries around the world are having to deal with China's Belt and Road Initiative. It's just been so enormously successful in buying off individual countries.
One asset manager says the EU's project is an opportunity for countries to distance themselves from China and take back some of the geopolitical gains that China has made in recent years.
I'm surprised that more Western governments aren't trying to establish some kind of clear water between their own economies and China rather than do exactly the opposite.
Price says Western governments should treat China as an adversary. The EU has recently struck deals in transportation, energy and digital projects with Japan and India. And infrastructure was also discussed at the recent G7 meeting. Concerns have been that China's Belt and Road Initiative is entrapping economically vulnerable countries. European banks are discussing taking on Montenegro's debt from China. But Price has concerns about the EU and governments in general taking on more debt, which has accelerated since the pandemic.
These are governments that are spending money hand over fist on infrastructure projects that can't be afforded.
Montenegro borrowed nearly $1 billion from China and defaulted on repayments, resulting in penalties. Armstrong says when it comes to global politics, though, £1 billion here and £1 billion there doesn't amount to much.
This isn't just about development, this is also about national security, European security. I think the ability to keep China excluded from having a stranglehold over a European country is a bargain for £1 billion.
China has launched construction projects in over 60 countries since 2013. Beijing denies that these projects deliver any political power. It says they are for the needs of ordinary people. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
The Director General of Britain's Security Service, also known as MI5, is warning about espionage from Russia, China, and Iran. It marks a transition from the agency's focus, back from counterterrorism following the 9/11 attacks. Here's more.
Tackling terrorism has been the priority for Western intelligence agencies since the 9/11 attacks on the United States. But now the counterterrorism force may need to transition to counter-espionage or tracking foreign spies. Britain's top spy master cautioned citizens on Wednesday, saying the threat of spying from Russia, China, and Iran should be treated with as much vigilance as terrorism.
The activity MI5 encounters day by day comes predominantly in quite varying ways from state or state-backed organizations in Russia, China, and Iran.
Director General Ken McCallum made the speech in London, the headquarters of Britain's security service MI5. In 2018, a nerve agent attack struck in England, targeting a former Russian double agent. Since then, MI5 has disrupted hostile power activity that might have resulted in an attempted killing.
As a nerve agent attack in Salisbury shows, some hostile actors are prepared to come here to kill. Others are more cautious and seek to lure or coerce individuals to travel out from the UK to other countries, where they can be detained or abducted or harmed.
McCallum explained MI5's biggest job is still tackling terrorism. He also cautioned against the dangers from Syria and Afghanistan, but said attention should focus on state actors. British spies say China and Russia have sought to steal commercially sensitive data and intellectual property, and have tried to interfere in domestic politics by sowing misinformation.
The British government is not using its powers to block a Chinese-controlled firm from taking over the UK's largest chipmaker. Parliament members are accusing the government of running a Project Kowtow.
During an urgent question at the Commons on Thursday, MPs ask why the government hasn't intervened in the sale of a semiconductor company in Wales to a Chinese-owned firm. Sir Geoffrey Clinton-Brown says it is completely inconsistent if the government allows the takeover of Newport wafer fab after banning Huawei's equipment over national security fears.
The Prime Minister also stated that we need to be more self-reliant. And he said that he was told that it costs £9 billion to build a semiconductor factory. Why would we allow such a sophisticated national infrastructure to be sold?
Newport Wafer Fab is the UK's largest semiconductor manufacturer and employs 450 people. Shadow Business Minister Chi Onwurah says the government should use powers in the National Security and Investment Act to urgently scrutinise this takeover.
This is a critical test of whether the government is willing to use these new powers or not, which goes to the heart of what kind of industrial strategy we have and what kind of country we want to be.
Former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith says the government is in an unholy mess over its approach to business deals involving China.
China is the biggest exporter in the world and is busy buying up semiconductor technology everywhere it can find it. They have identified semiconductor technology as one of the key areas that they need to dominate globally. My simple case is, are we now in the position of a kind of Project Kowtow, where we simply say, we just have to do business with the Chinese no matter what?
Business Minister Amanda Soloway says the government has looked closely at this transaction and doesn't consider it appropriate to intervene. The Prime Minister has asked National Security Advisor Sir Stephen Lovegrove to review the takeover. Earl Rhodes, NTD News.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. But before you go, be sure to check out our latest special report. This month marks the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party's founding. But as accusations of human rights abuses grow, one question often crops up: why the Chinese people don't just revolt against the Chinese Communist Party? One important factor is fear, imprinted onto Chinese people's hearts through decades of bloodshed caused by the CCP.
In fact, its fundamental purpose of the killing is to create and maintain an atmosphere of fear, and then use this fear to maintain its rule so that the people don't dare to resist or oppose the CCP.
In this special report, we look at the grueling facts about that killing and even human cannibalism, and why experts warn the world should watch out for the spread of communism, or else risk the same tragedies that happen in mainland China striking in their own backyards. Be sure to check it out on Epoch TV this Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. China in Focus is partnering with the platform. That's where you can watch our exclusive content every Friday night. To subscribe, click epochtv.com/China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.